So Jack now traces the IP address of a company's web server, and then he runs several types of nmap scans to find out the open ports and hence what services are running. As presumed by him, most of the unnecessary services were running. It provides him with a perfect ground to exploit the vulnerabilities. So what services do you think he would go ahead and target? Can he use those open ports to send commands to a compiler, gain access to his server, or exert command over different networking devices? And what are the countermeasures he could use against port scanning? Also, how can firewalls be evaded during the scanning? So let's take a look at that. We're going to take a look at proxy servers now. Now, a proxy server is basically any network computer that you can use to launch your attacks from or to establish the connection without it being done from you. Usually you use them as a firewall. Sometimes you want to protect and you don't want people to know where the request is coming from. You also use proxy servers if you have multiple servers that are going to respond. For instance, maybe you have a web farm or something like that. Proxy servers can be used as well to anonymize web surfing, as well as filtering out unwanted content. Proxy servers are commonly used to filter out different sites that you don't want people to go to. And proxy servers can give you some protection against hacking attacks, but be aware that a lot of hackers will use proxy servers just to get around these limitations. There are thousands of different free proxy servers that are available. Just simply go to Google and do a search for free proxy servers on the Google. You'll see a lot of them that are listed there. Now be aware that some of these are free proxy servers, but a lot of these might be honeypots. In other words, they might be tricks out there just to see if you'll try to use them. In other words, they might be traps that have been left out there to try to catch hackers. Basically, how do you use a proxy for an attack? Well, what you do is you use a different tool or a different chain of proxies, and you start your attack or you launch your attack from the first server, and then you'll have this whole chain of different servers. Now, what really makes this hard to track is that as a result, if you really want to track somebody back, you would have to examine the logs on each and every one of those proxy servers. If any of those servers is not keeping logs, or if the log is destroyed, then the identity of the attacker is very hard to track down. One of the tools you can use for this is SOCKS chain. It's a program that lets a hacker work through a chain of SOCKS or even HTTP proxies to conceal what his actual IP address is. Now, SOCKS chain can function as a usual SOCKS server that I can transmit queries, but it can also be used to hide identities. Anonymizers, there are various different services out there that allow you to be anonymous while you're surfing. The first one, when it was developed, was called anonymizer.com, and it was created back in 1997. Basically what it does is it removes all identifying information from your request so that while you're surfing, nobody can go back and see where you've been. So what it does basically, and it's intended to be, is a privacy tool, but of course it can be abused as well. So the way this works is you go to the different proxy server, which basically then from the proxy server issues your request, and then you get the response directly back from the target themselves. Now, with firewalls and IDS systems out there, a lot of times people can't get to where they want to go to. So what they do is they bypass these firewalls. In other words, what they're going to do is they're going to create an HTTP tunnel. Why HTTP? Because commonly HTTP port 80 is left open on firewalls. After all, you want people to come to your web server. Well, if it can be open on a web server, then I can also create that connection. So I can use a tool like HTTP tunnel. And basically what this allows me to do is create a bidirectional tunnel, if you will, that goes over HTTP. And this is very, very effective for getting around firewalls. I can also use HTTP port and HTTP host. Now, what these two tools do is basically I have a client and I have a server piece. And then what happens is I use the client and the server to establish this HTTP connection. So we've talked about a lot of different scanning techniques and a lot of different ways that you can try to fingerprint an OS. What can you do to protect yourself from all of this? Well, the first thing you can do is you can make sure that you've got a good firewall. Make sure that your firewall is good enough to look at everything that goes through. Try to get a firewall that does stateful packet inspection. have the firewall inspect exactly what is in that request when it comes through. Also, keep your firewalls up to date and patched. Another thing you can do is you can run a network intrusion detection system. Now basically, this will help you stop people from doing OS detection. So by having an intrusion detection system, it will stop them from getting the information. In addition, it will alert you to different patterns that it thinks people are trying to scan or to look at your network. Another thing you can do, which sounds easy, is only keep the ports open that you absolutely have to have. After all, if your web server is only serving up a web pages, you don't need FTP open. By the same token, if the web server is just doing web pages, you don't need POP3 or even SMTP open. So make sure that you only run the ports you need on the boxes that you need. In addition, make sure that all sensitive information that is sent over the internet is not in regular text. In other words, use something like SSL or HTTPS to make sure that your information cannot be intercepted on the internet. So, to summarize things up, scanning is one of the three major components of the intelligence gathering for an attacker. The objective of scanning is to find alive systems, and then once I know they're alive, find out what ports are running or active. Once I know the ports that are active, I can try to do OS fingerprinting, and then once I do the OS fingerprinting, I should be able to know exactly what services are running. Some of the tools that I can use are Nmap, Nessus, and Retina. And I could also use a chain of proxies, or the attacker can use a chain of proxies to help evade his attack.